Do you ever just sit back and relax? I mean, of course you do. You're a human being. And for some people, that might look like a nice cup of coffee, the sweet spot on the bed, maybe even a little jog around the lake. For some people, it's a little more intense.
That just flashed across your screen.
Yeah, these days it tends to be the latter more often than not. And hey, to each their own. I'm not one to judge how others spend their free time, but sometimes I really just want to be mellow. If you're looking for an anime or manga to fulfill such a desire, then perhaps you should look no further than the Iyashikei genre. Iyashikei, derived from the Japanese word iyashi, is used to refer to anime and manga that heal, with the goal of instilling a calming feeling or evoking emotional catharsis within the viewer. They don't use conflict or tension, and are rather focused on personal reflection and a sense of melancholy. Unlike your typical slice of life, Iyashikei isn't necessarily just focused on daily life. Rather, its goal is to offer something positive, where in slice of life, drama and even conflict still exist. Iyashikei completely avoids these aspects. And whilst I can totally see how many people may view this genre as boring, they often have a lot to offer when you dig a little deeper. Iyashikei isn't going to be for everyone. It's not going to blow your mind with exciting, action-packed stories and complex narratives and philosophical questions, but rather what they offer is light and warm, a soft and gentle reminder on the serenity of life itself. And what better series to show this than Aria? Aria embodies the word relaxation through its beautifully realized futuristic interpretation of Venice, to its down-to-earth characters and the romantic European visages and timbre which resonate with the viewer long after watching the show. Aria embodies the Iyashikei genre in a way that hasn't been quite matched since. I mean, this series in particular should hold a really special place in a lot of anime fans' hearts, with the Origination series achieving as high as second on the MyAnimeList Top 100 board, and for good reason. Its quality 100% deserves a second look. So let's take a look back in time. This is a retrospective on Aria. There's always been something very charming about Aria. Born amidst the political and social turmoil of 2001, Aria is starkly light and warm, especially when you compare it to the type of media that we were getting in the grunge boom of post-Y2K media. My mind instantly gravitates towards shows like Serial Experiments Lain, Haibane Renmei, Monster, and Ghost in the Shell, series that are characterized mainly by their exploration of humanity's dark side, the influence of technology, and subtle philosophical questioning. As such, Aria, in comparison, does seem to appear to be a little more simple. I mean, this was an edgy era of media, especially for anime and manga. I think this makes Aria stand out a lot. The idea of such a series coming out, especially amongst the angst of the post-Y2K world, not only holding its own against its contemporaries, but surpassing them in many regards, speaks volumes to the quality of the themes and the strength of Aria's story. But author Kozue Amano has been doing this for a very long time. Amano's work has always captured a little bit more of the whimsical side of the world. There's this kind of twinkle in the eye that comes part and parcel in the types of stories that she writes. Take, for example, her first big break with her serialization of the shonen series Roman Club, which began serialization from 1995 to 1996 over the course of 6 volumes in Enix's Shonen Gangan. Despite very much being a cheesy titular shonen, reminiscent of contemporaries like Yu Yu Hakusho, you can still catch glimpses of Amano's more laid-back approach. For a shonen, it's very fantasy-driven, and while it's certainly a little more melodramatic and conflict-driven when compared to Aria, it maintains Amano's signature charm through not only the artwork, where we can see inspiration for characters like Woody and Akira, but through its rather low-stakes plot for a shonen. Even her attempt at a dark fantasy series in Crescent Noise, which ran from 1997 to 2001, is much lighter in tone, especially when you compare it to contemporaries within its genre, being, if anything, more in line with something like Clamp Studios' works than Claymore or Berserk. In fact, this airiness and characteristic charm is what she focused down to in Aria. Aria originally published as Aqua before Amano moved to publisher Mag Garden. The intention behind her story was to make readers feel good. This hopeful tone is the series' hallmark, as director Junichi Satou notes that Aria can proceed on the tiniest emotional gestures, which gives the series a sort of heartwarming rhythm. There's no tension, no conflict, and no turmoil in Aria. It's, as Amano said herself, that I felt there was a limit to telling a story by having something bad happen and then solve it. She said instead that she set out to play freely by drawing first what she loved. Instead, what Aria does is take negative emotions and experiences and turn them into something positive. If we take a look at the afterword of Volume 2, Amano explicitly stated her goal was to have readers find happiness in small things and not to focus on failures. As such, you get a story that doesn't reach conclusions in a typically climactic way, rather it's the de-escalation that becomes the climactic reward of the story. Whilst this certainly runs true for a lot of Iyashikei manga, I feel as though Amano really mastered these subtle emotional beats in a way that I feel hasn't been done by any author since or before. Aria is a simple story. Set in the 24th century, Aria takes place on the planet Mars, which has been terraformed into an oceanic planet, serving as a secondary home to Manhome, originally known as Earth. In specific, Aria is set in the town of Neo Venezia, a carefully recreated version of the historic city of Venice on Earth. The town preserves the same old-world atmosphere with narrow canals, gondolas gliding through the water, and charming streets and alleys that invite exploration. A young girl named Akari Muzanashi, who grew up on Manhome, travels to Neo Venezia to chase her dream of becoming an Undine, who guides visitors through the canals. Alongside her mentor Alicia at Aria Company, Akari undertakes training to become a fully fledged Prima Undine. As Akari adjusts to her new life, she embraces the slow and peaceful rhythm of Neo Venezia, finding not only joy in her new life, but the everyday joys that come down all the way to the little inconveniences. So now that we know what Aria is and how it came to be, why is Aria so good? An aria, a long accompanied song for a solo voice, typically one in an opera or a oratorio. By nature, an aria is one-off, self-contained within itself. Indeed, arias are, unlike a recitative, a pause in the story, often being introspective and giving the audience a moment to reflect on the character and the story. Fitting to its name, Aria the series uses this very philosophy in its narrative structure. You see, the thing with episodic structures is that you really can't analyze or review these type of stories the way you would a more linear narrative. In particular, not a story like Aria where there is little to no conflict, let alone an overarching narrative to latch onto. What you have, rather, is a premise and ideas that come from that premise. A story like Cowboy Bebop does this by making each week a new bounty hunt. But even then, Cowboy Bebop still has some overarching narrative. Aria really has none. As such, you have to view each episode and chapter as they are. It's the only way that such a non-confronting plot can work, as the expectation that there is something to be gained in the narrative each episode is eliminated. Indeed, the only real overarching or continued storyline is the cat safe one, which is ultimately a vessel for exploring the more subtle coming-of-age themes within the story. I think that's the strength of a lot of slice-of-life narratives, not just Aria. There's something very palpable about the idea of viewing life as it is. But with that being said, I often don't find these types of slice-of-life series to be very interesting. I think in the past I've discussed that part of the reason why I tend to find slice-of-life so lackluster is because it's often not actually indicative of real life. Surprisingly, when these shows make an effort to be quote-unquote slice-of-life, they lose a lot of authenticity, and in the end, they feel very artificial. I think when a story doesn't have a firm grasp on how reality operates, they fall into the trap of over-exaggerating and over-dramatizing conflicts. Aria, however, not only successfully portrays life, but also creates a very tangible conflict to overcome. I think in large part this is thanks to the fantastic world building of the narrative, but also, the actual individual narratives themselves are very palpable, and as Amano intended to capture many of the mundane inconveniences that we face in our own daily lives. The only real difference then is that we experience these inconveniences through Amano's worldview and in particular her characterization of Akari. I think Amano's characterization of Aria as a story with no conflict is a little bit more nuanced than just that. Some chapters or episodes will still have a degree of conflict in them, because by nature, even in an Iyashikei, life is full of conflict. Rather, what Amano's really getting at is that the scale of the conflict is far smaller than a linear narrative one, but more than just that, the conflicts tend to resolve themselves in more natural, more casual ways. But why does Aria make me feel this way? Why does a series like Aria successfully capture slices of life, whereas, say, a series like Love Live don't do it for me? And most importantly, what makes the world of Aria so engaging and enjoyable to read and watch? I think really at its core, Aria is a very simple story about the things that Amano loves. She describes Aria as a story that is quite literally about water and cats. With no defined narrative pathway, Amano can simply focus on the things that she loves within her story. A hallmark of Aria is its episodic approach to storytelling and its focus on visual aesthetics and natural imagery, which help pace the viewer in a calm state of mind. If anything, the most fleshed out character within Aria itself is the city of Neo Venezia. Of course, her world draws heavy inspiration from the real-life city of Venice. Indeed, several of the key landmarks within the stories are positioned in real places. For example, the Aria building, which is located at the real-life location of a Venetian Vaporetto shot, and the rival Himia company, located in the historic Hotel Danieli. The world also comes complete with equivalents to St. Mark's Square and the Bridge of Sighs. And more than just that, it's the festivals, the ruins, the fantastical mysterious cats, and the dedication to the life of Venice that breathes air into the imaginary world of Neo Venezia. I think if I had to say one thing that Aria truly excels at, it would be its world building. Neo Venezia is a fully thought out world down to the gravitational pull. Being set in the 24th century on the planet Mars, Aria has a lot to play around with in terms of sci-fi concepts, which it excels at showing through the visuals. The clash of rustic European and this kind of steampunky sci-fi stuff reminds me a lot of another Iyashikei manga series that you might have heard of, Yokohama's Shopping Log. I actually found these two series really similar in the presentation of their world building. Even with some of these slight thematic differences, they both have a shared comfort in decay and the past, a nostalgia that carries through the world in often subtle ways. Aria is a little bit more on the discovery side than Yokohama Shopping Log, and the setting and the world of Aria really leans into that more adventurous side, which is awesome. A lot of the episodes are about exploring Neo Venezia and its surrounding areas, and it's here where we get to see one of Aria's strengths, its visuals. Amano is a great visual storyteller. Ruins of mansions turned bathhouses, floating cities in the sky operated by the salamanders, underground societies home to gnomes, and steampunk delivery bikes of the Sylph, as well as these super sick spaceships on the horizon and mystic Eastern-inspired temples. Aria is a delight in what it can pack just within its visual storytelling. Not only is Amano a beautiful draftsman, capable of creating some really amazing panels, but she is excellent in using environmental storytelling to flesh out the world and engage the reader. Well, yeah, we are on occasion subject to info dumps. It's just enough to be interesting without overstaying its welcome, and still leaving a lot up to the viewer's imagination. That's not to say the world isn't extremely well thought out though. Quite the opposite. One such element where this becomes readily apparent is Amano's focus on seasonal changes of Mars. Indeed, one of the most important aspects of the world, and in turn the story of Aria, is the seasonal changes in weather. A Martian calendar was devised so that each year on Aqua has 6-month seasons, and the manga often marks holidays such as the fireworks in summer, New Year's Eve, and birthdays to highlight the time's passage. It was Amano's hope that by reading Aria, the reader would gain a deeper appreciation for seasonal changes that we ourselves experience. Some of the best chapters in the entire story are based around these seasonal changes. Take, for example, Navigation 6's Snowbug, which gave me one of my favorite panels in the entire manga. That being said, the calendar also helped make for one of my favorite chapters outside of just helping the reader appreciate seasonal changes. I think Navigation 46's birthday, which sees Akira and Afina visit Alicia on her birthday, becomes one of the best in the entire series. You see, the 24-month calendar on Mars brought in the often forgotten tradition of reverse birthdays, which are celebrated 12 months after your original birthday. Essentially, Akira is disappointed that she can't celebrate it with Alicia because she's been so busy, despite wanting to see her on her day off. But at the end, by chance, Alicia, Akira, and Afina all meet up together for Akira to give a present to Alicia. It's one of the cutest chapters in the entire series, and I feel like it gave the audience some well-needed depth to the relationship of the three water fairies. I have to really praise Amano here, as she was very dedicated to fleshing the world out, even to some of its more finite details, utilizing the mechanics of the world to create heartwarming stories around them. I think it would be very easy for a story like Aria to not even bother to explain the mechanics of the world and still maintain its themes. But I really love how Amano goes a step beyond and turns what would still be a fun and heartwarming slice of life into something far more lived in. On a slight tangent, there's also something very indescribably cool about seeing spaceships in a rustic setting. In that way, Aria kind of reminds me of Cowboy Bebop. I think Aria's visuals really are just the best of both worlds, striking the perfect balance between decaying architecture and advanced sci-fi tech. Aesthetically, the world feels very, very lived in, which Amano very clearly illustrates through her artwork, but also through her exploration of culture. The best episodes and chapters for me personally came from the ones that revolved around events to do with the city of Neo Venezia itself. The Festa del Boccolo in Navigation 15, the Carnival in Navigation 10 with the mysterious Casanova, and Navigation 52's Marriage of the Sea, as well as Navigation 47's Christmas celebration, all stand out to me as really great chapters. Taking a look at the cultural sides of Neo Venezia, the series is steeped in the custom, tradition, and nostalgia of the past. It's not just a lesson in the history of Venice and culture, it's this kind of beautiful reflection on life, nostalgia, and beauty of tradition. We often see across Aria an appreciation of old, forgotten, and obsolete places and things. It's the fact that despite how advanced technologically the society is, it is still deeply rooted in the past, almost like a yearning for the simplicity that we associate with it. In fact, it's something that Akari makes very abundantly clear in the first chapter of the Aria manga. The world of Neo Venezia is inconvenient by design, because to be obtuse and inconvenient is undoubtedly human. Amano is able to make this beautiful observation through fleshing out the world of Neo Venezia and Mars as its own living and breathing character. Perhaps that's why the city of Venice is the perfect place for the story of Aria. Amano is able to get something really beautiful through the setting of Venice in this futuristic world. We see how, despite the advances in technology, the culture surrounds itself in the past, fulfilling the city's nostalgia with old world traditions from Earth. Venice has always, in and of itself, been a nostalgic place. It's often described as one of the most romantic cities in the world. Writers from Shakespeare and The Merchant of Venice to Thomas Mann and his book Death in Venice, people have been obsessed with its beauty and, to an extent, its decay. In the 15th century, Venice kind of stood as a global power city of trade, a symbol of wealth and decadence in Europe. But slowly over time, it's decayed, losing a lot of its trade monopoly with the discovery of new trade routes around Africa. Yet there remains this Venetian nostalgia for the city. There's something inherently beautiful about the aging architecture and the fading aristocratic tradition that I feel Amano captures really beautifully, giving us quite a lot of insight into our relationship with nostalgia. It's this insight that is not only reflective of Amano's personal philosophy, but of the Iyashikei genre as a whole. There's a concept in Japanese philosophy called mono no aware. Its direct translation is the pathos of things, but the general idea of it is an aesthetic appreciation for the impermanence of the world around us, an understanding of the fleeting nature of people, objects, places, and even memories. This concept is inherently entwined within the Iyashikei genre, and by extension, Aria and the world of Neo Venezia. Part of the reason why Amano is able to explore this so well is, I think, in part due to her characterization of Akari. Akari Akari really is the perfect protagonist for a story like Aria. Despite not being from Venice herself, she shares the same Venetian appreciation for culture, the past, and the beauty hidden within the decay. Akari, like Amano, embodies mono no aware. I think one of the things that really drew me to this story in particular was how different it was to traditional Venetian stories. Rather, what we see from Akari is this appreciation and even love for the preservation of the city. She's also just a very, very endearing character. I mean, the story kind of makes her come off as airheaded or a little bit lost, but I think it's that quality that makes her such a great protagonist for the story. Take, for example, Navigation 13's The Town Treasure. Akari, alongside Alice and Aika, find a treasure map, which excites Akari a lot. Aika is very unamused, but decides to tag along as they go on their treasure hunt. Akari kind of revels in the simple joy of existing in the moment, and enjoying the time that she spends walking around looking for the treasure. The payoff is a beautiful view of the city, which the group sort of revels in themselves. While the main theme of this chapter is joy in shared discovery, I think it does a great job of highlighting Akari's easy excitement over simply existing. Her ability to take in fleeting moments and make them something special is what makes her character what it is. We constantly see her seek out mysteries within the city. Take, for example, the discovering of the identity behind Casanova at the carnival in Navigation 10, all the way to her subsequent encounters with the huge black cat in parts of the story such as Navigation 17, 30, and 38. I also want to take a look at one of my favorite chapters in the entire series, Navigation 32's Blackout. The chapter properly begins with Akari undertaking one of her first actual tours with a customer. Akari is really nervous, but regardless, does her duties in explaining away the city. The customer, however, briefly interrupts and points out a backyard filled with beautiful flora, which excites Akari greatly, as despite always coming down this alley, she had never noticed how beautiful the garden was. Later on in the chapter, Alicia finds out that the electricity in the area surrounding the Aria company building will be shut down for maintenance. It's here where we learn that Akari is afraid of the dark and that she can't sleep without a little bit of light. As such, Alicia decides to light up the house with candles, showing how different the company feels when it's lit this way. However, after Akari accidentally blows out all of the candles, she's once again left stranded in the dark. Alicia, however, takes her up the stairs to her room, where she is met with light from the night sky. The main point of this chapter and story is really about how often we miss the innumerable amount of beautiful things within our daily lives, and that sometimes it only takes a change in perspective of the world around us to view things in a new light. I love this chapter for a few reasons. For one, it really reminded me of myself when I was a kid, not being able to fall asleep at night myself without the outside light on. But more than just that, I think it really humanizes Akari. It's pretty rare across the series that we see Akari placed in a position where she is outright afraid, so we get to see this whole new side of her character. But it's also a perfect way of showing how Amano is able to resolve the conflicts within her stories in a relaxing and non-pandering way. Akari isn't told how to feel or how to respond. Rather, she's guided slightly by Alicia and comes to realize on her own the inherent beauty in the things she hadn't seen before. What I like about Akari's character and in general Amano's worldview is that it reminds us that the concept of mono no aware does not have to be sad. Rather, at its core, it's an appreciation of these moments that become fleeting over time. It's simply about being aware. In this way, Akari really embodies the meaning of the entire series. Without Akari, Aria does not have its identity. What you have in a lot of slice of life series is a protagonist that is interchangeable, one that can act as a substitute for the audience. The same goes for a lot of rom-com and harem anime, where you're not really looking at a fully fleshed out character, more so a loose string of personality traits. Aria is far different. The show loses its identity without a character like Akari, because what she represents isn't a surrogate for the world, but an insight into our better nature, the one that tells us to love everything for what it is. But with that being said, the rest of the cast is fantastic as well. Alice typically has to overcome her shyness and as well find the balance between her mature and child sides. Aika also focuses on trying to become reliable and aspires to become like Alicia. I love both of these characters a lot. They preserve the same charm as Akari while fulfilling their respective roles. What I really enjoyed most was how they worked as an ensemble. Amano had some really great dialogue between each of the characters, and I particularly enjoyed the humor in Aria. especially between Akari and Aiko. Of course, what I loved the most was how the ensemble worked as mirrors to the three water fairies. It's almost cyclical how this reflects the passage of time. Much of the wisdom of Aria comes from the troubles that each of the characters have, which are ones that are reflected in the struggles faced by their mentors. Subsequently, it is in part the students as well who help their teachers overcome their challenges in the end. Going back to Navigation 46's birthday, we're shown how the relationship between Alicia, Athena, and Aika changed as they became Prima Undine. The same is true for Akari, Alice, and Aiko. In the end, they too get proteges, and the cycle once again continues. In this way, Amano is once again able to show the main theme of the story. This is not just a story about rowing, gondolas, and exploring Neo-Venetia. It's one about how fleeting experiences transform and persevere. Once again, we go back to this concept of mono no aware. It's truly incredible how every aspect of Aria, down to the function of the cast itself, to the title of the story, work in tandem to create meaning. And then there's the rest of the cast. This same repetition is kind of seen in Al, Akatsuki, and Woody, who act not just as male leads, but as representations of the other major communities within the story. They're fun, and whilst they aren't central to the plot, they help to really flesh out the world and give the cast some well-needed depth. They end up playing decently large roles in certain stories, as well as just being some very likable characters. Aria really is a very good case study in how you can taper over loose plots with undefined motives just by having good characters. And while the complexity of the characters may not be readily apparent from the get-go, when you dig a little deeper, you can begin to see how integral they are to the story. Overall, Aria was and still is great, beyond just the themes and characters themselves. I think Amano was truly able to achieve what she set out to do with this story, creating something relaxing that you can just kick back to. In its purest form, Aria is Iyashikei done right. Aria, alongside its prequel manga Aqua, would receive a full-length anime adaptation in 2005 from HAL Film Makers under director Junichi Satou. These would be the Aria the Animation, Aria the Natural, and Aria the Origination. Aria's long history of anime adaptation includes anime original content such as the Arietta, Avenia, and, forgive my pronunciation, the Crepuscolo, and Benedizione. While this content is a little bit outside the scope of this video, I did want to mention them as they are good and enjoyable content for fans looking for a little more from the Aria series. With that being said, the Aria anime does a lot to not only change, but improve upon what was already great about the manga. In large part, it's because Aria is really a very auditory manga. Music is a huge part of the story, and without it, the manga can often feel like it's missing something. Koro Club, alongside composer Takeshi Senu, were interestingly given loose, abstract themes as opposed to plot points to develop the music around. The selection for Koro Club to make this soundtrack was not random at all. They had previously worked on the OST for Yokohama Shopping Log and had experience making a soundtrack for an Iyashikei series. What came from this collaboration is one of the best anime soundtracks of all time. Koro Club nailed the timeless, rustic, and romantic charm of the series, giving the music an endlessly charming Venetian European atmosphere. The use of mandolins, accordions, acoustic guitars, and pianos seamlessly translates the feel and vibe of Aria. It is my firm belief that the single best way to experience the story of Aria is by listening to the soundtrack on Spotify while reading the manga. It really is, in many ways, impossible to imagine this series as entwined it is with music without the soundtrack that Koro Club provided. According to Junichi Satou, music was to play a highly critical role in the anime from the get-go. Working with limited episodes, he wasn't able to fit in all the scenes that he wanted to within the short time span. So, he let the music carry certain scenes. The opera segments with Athena's characters in particular were originally meant to be just entirely gibberish. However, singer Eri Kawai later replaced them with Japanese lyrics by her own inspired image of Neo-Venetia. The first two season theme songs were likewise initially planned to be wordless melodies, but later gained meaningful lyrics. Makino's Undine theme, for example, was given lyrics by Eri Kawai after she read the manga. I think part of what makes this soundtrack, however, as special as it is to me specifically, is how the music blends into the scenes. In a very romantic European way, it feels almost as if the music itself is diegetic to the world. like it's something playing off in the distance. And of course, the anime changed a lot more than just the sound. The Aria anime, while it does cover most of the manga series, leaves out some key chapters, including some of my personal favorites like Navigation 46's Birthday and Navigation 53's Cat Safe. In general, the order of the chapters shifted a lot during the adaptation, and for the most part, due to an explicit subtle change in the pacing. A lot of the more slice of life bits that would have been in the animation series were moved to natural, as that came alongside a 26 episode runtime. What we get is, in my opinion, a slightly better paced series, as each season offers a subtle change in the structure of the story. For the most part, story beats are either simply condensed or implied to have happened off screen. I think the way that they adapted certain chapters in segments was a good way of doing things, because it fit within the bounds of their anime time frame, while still keeping the bulk of what made the story. As for the art, lead designer Makoto Koga stays very faithful to the original manga designs. Of course, by nature, the lines in the manga create for a thicker, more exaggerated outline, but the art in the anime series is very good. Of course, I think it's really hard to recreate Amano's beautiful one-page still shots into a TV anime, so I still prefer the art in the manga a little bit more. That being said, the color palette does a lot for the series, as it really brings out the life of Neo Venezia in a way that you really can't with black and white, and in turn, we get something that is really beautiful. And this was, in my opinion, thanks to a very serious adaptation attempt from the staff working on the series. Prior to airing in 2004, the team behind Aria even took a trip to Venice in order to get a better grasp of how they would animate the series, leading even to some original anime content such as Alicia's soccer ball toss in episode 11 of the animation, which was created after the staff observed gondoliers in Venice. Overall, I would say that the anime adaptation not only does a solid, faithful adaptation of the story, but in some ways surpasses the manga in terms of what it achieves. I don't think I would go as far as to say that I think one is better than the other. I mean, at the end of the day, that really is a subjective observation. The anime series fleshes out the world in a way that the manga format simply doesn't allow, but Amano's beautiful draftsmanship and her usage of big one-page stills are something that you really just can't achieve in a TV anime. For that, I would say that they're both equal, and really, however you decide to experience the series, you're still going to get the best experience. So, to conclude this retrospective, hopefully you can now too see why Aria is such a fantastic show. Simple stories are often overlooked in favor of complex narratives, but what we fail to recognize is how deep and thematic a series like Aria can be. For sitting at the top of the My Anime List charts for a solid amount of time, we rarely talk about a series like Aria. A show like Aria is the type of show that we view in passing, enjoy, and then simply forget. True to their nature, they are meant to be fleeting stories, ones that heal you for a time, and then you move on, hopefully to bigger and better things. But every once in a while, you have to just sit back and take a look back in time. It's been a while in particular since something like Aria has come out and wowed me like the world of Neo Venezia. In many ways, the Iyashikei genre feels a little bit like a lost art in and of itself. But maybe in a keenly Iyashikei way, that's okay, because really, Aria was a series that made me just a little bit happy. Hey guys, Durfin here, just speaking off the dome. Just want to say thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed making this one. This is technically my longest project, although the Sword Art Online episode was supposed to be longer, but obviously that didn't pan out because of copyright stuff. But I'm really happy to have made this video. Hoping to make longer stuff like this more often, now that I have more time, and I have a bunch of ideas coming through, and I just want to say thank you so much if you made it to the end here. I really appreciate you guys coming out and watching these videos. So yeah, anyway, this is just me, just wanted to give a little update, just wanted to say peace out and thank you.